Voilà. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this webinar, whose title today will be How to Anticipate and to Deal with Export Link. So my name is Carole Monet. I work for Brussels, and I'm in charge of helping the Brussels company to export, and particularly in sub-Saharan countries, so particularly in Africa. Today I'm very pleased, I'm very happy to welcome three speakers coming from the PUSA company. So Elena Calouet, welcome. Alex Bian and Jean-Guillaume Benoit, I'm very happy to have you today. So you are going to help us to answer the question how to anticipate and to deal with the export link. I think I will really leave you manage the speech between each of you. But before we begin, maybe I will share some practical information with the different companies registered. So we have for this webinar approximately an hour and a half. So we will try to respect as soon as possible this time. We will also share with you some questions during the webinar, so please do not hesitate to answer them. You can also interrupt the speaker at any time and ask your question via the question tab that you have on the platform, on this platform. And if at the end of the webinar you still have some questions, so please feel comfortable to send us an email. The speakers will be very happy to answer you. And at least no problem for you, because we will send you the presentation and the presentation will also be available on our website. So now I will give the floor to the first speaker, who I think is going to be Elena. So Elena, you have the floor.
Thank you, Carole. So hey, good afternoon, everyone. Also from us at PwC, a very warm welcome to this webinar on export risks and export risk management. We are very delighted to be here, and we want to thank the entire Brussels Hub team for the invitation, as this is a topic that is something that we are very passionate about. Maybe we can go to slide 2. During this webinar, we will cover a variety of topics that relate to export risks, things to consider when venturing in international trade, but I will dive into that in a minute. If we can go to the next slide. And the next one. So first, who are we and who is presenting this webinar for you? In the call today, we have Alex and Jean-Guillaume and myself. We're all working in the PwC International Trade Team of Lionel Van Reet. Leo could unfortunately not be here today, as he's for the moment actually tackling an export risk for one of our clients with Belgian customs. As I said, this presentation will be given to you by my most esteemed colleagues, Alex and Jean-Guillaume, who already have a nice track record in assisting clients with various customs and international trade-related issues. You will see that in our presentation, we will bring you practical examples of the risks we have seen with our clients and which tools are available to you to mitigate these kinds of risks for your company as well. Maybe we can go to the next slide. And the one after, yeah. On this slide, you see that basically around each corner, a risk can pop up when you start to engage in international trade. It is indeed a very complex endeavor. And if I might say, not something that you can pinpoint down in one department of your company. Your finance and legal department will, of course, be impacted, but also your logistics department, the customer service department, the sales team, even your product design department, and also your third parties that you're working with. I'm thinking of your transportation providers, your brokers. So it's very broad, this topic. Maybe we can go to the next slide. Since the international trade risks touch upon almost all of the departments in your company, it should also indeed be a part of your broader company strategy. And that is now exactly what we want to bring to you today in this presentation, a framework of export risk that you can bring to your next internal strategy meeting. So you will see the topics that we will bring, that Alex and Jean-Guillaume will bring, are very practical, something to take into account as from the moment that you will start doing export transactions to clients. These topics will be discussed in a minute now. Alex is going to start. She will guide you through the framework, and she will start with the political risk. Afterwards, she will dive into the exchange rate risk and the Delcreditor risk as well. Afterwards, Jean-Guillaume, he will give you a flavor of all the global trade control risks, the logistic risks, and the boycott risk. And with all these topics together, you will have a framework that you can bring to your next board meeting to see where you need to tackle something. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Alex.
Yes, I hope everybody can hear me. Yes?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Alexandra, but everybody calls me Alex. So it's Alex. I'm a senior consultant at PwC. I'm a lawyer by background, and I assist companies in their international transactions. And many of these risks that we're going to see today, we see them also with our clients. So this is we'll try to bring our experience in our presentation, so that we can give a practical presentation as possible. So we'll start with the political risk. So here we have gathered some examples on the slides on some recent political events. And the idea here is to help you understand why political events such as Brexit, such as protests in Brazil, such as a military coup in Myanmar can have an impact on your export. So first we have here the example of Brexit. This example I am sure you are all aware of. So this is the UK leaving the European Union. And recently the UK and the European Union have signed an agreement. So is it that easy for exports and for economic operators? Well, no, we will see in a minute. Then we have a second example of Myanmar, where we have, I think it was February this year, a military coup that happened in the country, and lots of protests happening, and also banks closing, private banks closing have a direct impact on cash flows. We have also an example of Brazil and recent protests against the president's way of dealing with the COVID-19 crisis. So we also have these kind of examples that are happening all over the world in relation to COVID as well. So why are these military and these political events having an impact on your export? First of all, because they bring about uncertainty. So this is, for example, the issue of Brexit. For a long time, we had companies did not know what's going to happen with Brexit. Was it going to be a hard Brexit? Was it going to be a soft Brexit? Was the UK remaining in the customs union? What will be the template for the relations? So many companies were not aware of the situation. And this, and then when we had the agreement, they weren't prepared, and this brings additional costs. Some of them, many of them actually stopped exporting to the UK because of these last-minute changes in legislation and the fact that they were not prepared. So in this way, a sudden change in legislation can be a political risk, which is the case of Brexit. What about case of Myanmar or case in other protests in Brazil and in other countries? This has also an impact on export flows because of, for example, violence taking place in the country, the economic operators not having access to cash and canceling contracts. So that is also something that we have seen, and that can bring about a risk at your exportation. but the situations of protest and violence and other political risk can also bring about other risks. So I've mentioned here the fact that contracts can be cancelled, which is also another type of risk, that is the credit risk. The fact that Myanmar, they're now subject to potential sanctions, so it's also another risk that could be related to a political risk. So we see that actually political risks are often the source of other risks. So it's a very broad notion, actually. So maybe we can go now to the slides where we have the definition of political risk, which is a very, very big definition, very broad definition. Basically, it refers to the implications of recent political decisions, events, or conditions that affect actually the profitability of a business or the expected value of a given business. Why expected? And this is mostly in relation to investments and, for example, expropriation of investments that can happen in those countries where they don't have a sound economic policy, but actually just freeze assets or freeze investments that companies have made. So you have to understand if this is going to happen and why this is happening and how to mitigate this. So basically, political risk affects several aspects of a business. It can be the personnel, it could be the assets, as I just explained, contracts, the example I was dealing before, and also companies transfers and company goals in the end, because every company should have a goal. If the assets are taken, or if the things are not happening as they were planned to be, the goal of a company in the end are also affected. So this is the definition of political risk. So corruption can also be a political risk. Expropriation can be a political risk. So we have many different options for political risk. So maybe now we can launch the first question on are the companies here present today subject to those political risks? It would be good to have a poll on that. So I don't know how long we're giving the floor for the responses for the questions.
A few seconds left.
Minute. Is it okay, Thomas?
Moderate exposure was the most answered response. Okay. So now, but actually, some people might think that they're moderately exposed, but it happens at any time in a company's career, if I can say, that at some point there is a political risk that is maybe it's disguised political risk, but often the political risk is at the source of any other risk that is happening. So maybe now we can go into ways to mitigate or political risk. Is not really to mitigate, actually, it's how to prepare yourself. So the main advice I would give is know the country where you are going to export, and know the intermediaries and where they're located. So we have different tools that we are presenting here, but there are other tools as well. This is just a sample, a selection of tools that can help you assess that the country's exposures to maybe political events. So there is first the Unconflict Location Event Data Project, and this is a very nice tool. Actually, it's a sort of an interactive map where you can click on the country, and then when you click on the country, you have the selection of criteria and political events or violences that is happening in that region. So it gives you a nice flavor on what is happening in real life. So I think it's updated every time, every day or something. Or every week, but at least it's real life events. So that's really good to assess. It's mostly for violence and political pressure, etc. And we have March. They publish 3 reports. For example, the political risk map of 2020, which is very good because they give a summary on the regions and what's happening there, etc. So I invite you to have a look at that. Most of the elements in this 3 reports are still valid today. And this they also provide for insurances for this kind of events, but these are of course paid services. So this is not a data as such, but then we have as well the World Bank. I think is the most well-known among the 3. Well, at least this is the one I use the most. And this one, they rate countries based on indicators. So, for example, sound law. This is an indicator. The fact that a country has corruption cases is also an indicator, and expropriation, etc. is also this kind of criteria that I use. So I invite you as well to have a look at these links, which are for free. So you can just click and see and check the country where you think you would like to export or where your client is located, just to make sure that you are confirming that it's not a bad, not to say that there's bad countries, but the countries where there's limited risk, especially if you are a small company and you don't have the resources to actually deal when there is something happening. The best way for you is to prevent it, to prevent dealing with high risk countries. So that's what for political risk. If there are any questions on political risk, I can take them now, or we can wait at the end of the presentation. Carol, let me know if there is any question.
Yeah, let me see. Thomas, you have a question for this first part? No, I don't think so. You can continue.
Okay, but in any case, we also are happy to provide an answer by email if there's questions that come up later on.
Yes, of course, yes.
So the question now, exchange rate risk, which is, I think, one of the risks that the companies here are the most facing, I would say, because this is a risk that actually we see a lot. The fact that when you deal with different currencies, you have fluctuations, and this has a direct impact on a company's cash flow. So this is a very common risk. But maybe before going into the case, we can actually ask the question, are companies facing exchange rate risk, or actually no, are they dealing with another currency, so that we can see to what extent they could be relevant for this exercise. So the predominant answer is yes. International transactions in another currency, so potentially subject to exchange rate risk, which is risk in fluctuation. So maybe Jean-Guillaume, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so here we took actually a real case scenario, which is a case that is actually taught in a lot of international commercial class and business class. So we thought it was a good idea to bring this here. So it's the BMW case. So before, I don't remember exactly when it was, a couple of years ago, BMW had the plant in Germany with the raw materials imported, I think, from Japan and China. And they were directly delivering, serving the entire world from their hub in Germany. And they had issues. Why? Because they had also branches a bit all over the world. So the money flow, etc., were in another currency, but also the contracts, etc., with their clients were in other currencies. And because of a weak dollar and because of the yen rising and defluctuating, etc., they had a lot of profits that were out because of the exchange rate fluctuation. So what did BMW do to assess and to change the situation? They did two things, which we try to put in a scheme here. So first, they tried to do how we call a natural hedge, meaning they try to work mainly in one currency. So how did they do? They spent money in the same currency as where the sales taking place, so that the revenues were also in the local currency. So how do you do that? They establish factories in the country where the products were sold. So this is a way to deal with what currency. And the second way is involving more purchases denominated in the currency of its main market. So they had a treasury center in the US for the US market, etc. So the idea here is to always operate in one currency, even though there is a supply chain that is worldwide. We're not expecting, of course, companies like small and medium enterprises to elaborate such kind of schemes for their own company. This is complicated, of course, and BMW is a huge company with a lot of resources. But what we wanted to say here today is to make them aware, make the companies aware that fluctuations can happen and fluctuations can have a direct impact on your cash flow. So this is the risk with the exchange rates and with dealing with different currencies. Maybe Jean-Guillaume can go to the next slide. So why is exchange rate risk important? Why? Because it has an impact. It has three inherent risks. It has a transaction risk, a translation risk, and an economic risk. So the risk is that the money and currency can fluctuate in unexpected ways. So even on a daily, weekly basis, it can have a very big effect. So this is why it is important to monitor this. There's a translation risk. Why? Because it has an effect on your balance sheet after conversion. So there's a direct impact on your cash flow, and in fine, on your economic, on the competitive advantage of the company. So economic. So it has an impact on your budget, your cash flow, on your accounts, and on your competitive position. So while the BMW case was maybe a complicated example, let's take an easy example. You sell a product. You are a company usually dealing with euros. You sell a product for $100, and then on the next day, actually, when the company, your buyers, actually pays you in cash or transfer the money in dollar, and the dollar has devaluated, and suddenly you will receive less euros because you convert them than originally planned in the contract. So this is a very simple example, but it happens all the time. So how can you deal with that? How can you make sure that the price that you originally set is actually what you're gonna get in your accounts after conversion? There are different ways. So maybe we can go to the next slide. First is always dealing with one currency. So you ask your clients to pay you in euros. So they will have to deal with the exchange rates themselves. Or you have clauses in the contract where you have a fixed exchange rate in the contract, or you mention the price both in euros or in dollars corresponding, or you can also take example on all these complicated terms, vanilla options, currency swaps, and etc. But this is more for buying and selling currencies. But the same principles can apply to a contract. So basically, you could shape the contract in a way that you have a future debt for a fixed price with a fixed exchange rate, and this contract will trump any other situations where you have fluctuations because it would bind the parties. So how we deal with that is to be prepared, because this will happen, and for sure, because the currency never stays the same. They always fluctuate. It could be at your advantage, of course, but it could be also at your disadvantage. So prepare yourself and make sure that the contract is soundly drafted so that you are paid what is due. So this is our main advice for the companies here today, to check that. But maybe Carole as well, you have a bit of experience with African countries and with exchange rate risk you mentioned on the phone. So don't hesitate also to ask us questions in this regards, or to give your opinion.
Yes,
Maybe if there is
exactly.
questions from the audience, we are ready.
I try to see if we have some questions. Thomas, do we have some? No. So they are very concentrated of what you are saying. So they will
I
ask
hope
questions.
this is because it's clear and that they don't have any questions because of that.
But
Even if it's not clear, feel free to.
Of course, it have to be very dynamic. So don't hesitate to ask questions if you have, and we will try to answer you as soon as possible. Yes, Alex, you can continue.
Yes. Okay. Then I think we can go to the next slide. The Delcré des risques. Delcré des risques. So it's the risk arising from a possibility of a buyer or guarantor not being able to pay. It could be a decision he makes canceling the contract, or it could be because of other issues, like we are reasons, like we're gonna see the example here. You can go to the. Okay, so here we have a company. Donc we can say let's take a Belgian company that exports for the first time in China, and the retailer in China is a very big company, so you trust the company there because they have more experience. So you let them decide on the Incoterm, the payment conditions, and everything. So the deal is that the company will make use of the buyer's freight forwarder, and the Incoterms is FOB. So you as a seller, you're responsible for the goods until they're on board, and you're liable for the transport cost insurance. And as a sign of trust, you use letter of credit. But because you use the Chinese business freight forwarder, you are losing control on that point and on all the documents, etc. So imagine there is a problem with all the documents that needs to be filled in, and then everything is on track, but then the bank of the buyer refused to pay because the documents are not soundly drafted. There is a problem. What happens? Do you have insurance? The company, the seller does not want, the buyer does not want to pay, but the products are already going to be shipped. So what do you do in this situation? This is an example that happens a lot because of Incoterms, because of badly sounded contracts, because of you don't know who you're dealing with, and then you have a marchandise that is lost or that is not paid. So this is an example of a Delcré des risques. You're not paid, basically. So let's go to the next slide, which is basically the explanation of the Delcré des risques. So it's the risks that arise from the impossibility of a buyer to make the payment, or relented to make a payment, or because there is a letter of credit, for example, where you have conditions that all the documents are good drafted, that the bank doesn't pay, and that you are with your goods, but no buyer for your goods. So it has an impact, of course, on the liquidity position on your business. Also on the logistical risk. Imagine you need to get back all the products, etc. Loss of competitiveness and reduced profit margin. So it has a lot of different impacts. And this is a risk that is happening a lot, especially for new businesses that have a new client and they don't know what to do. And this is a risk that can arise easily. So how do you deal with those risks? Jean-Guillaume, if you can go to the next one. Yes, thanks. Well, know your business. I know it's and the people you're dealing with and the client you're dealing with. I understand that it's difficult for companies which are starting to export because they don't have this experience of reliable customers or third parties they're working with. But this is something you built, and I think the most important is to draw experience from your past experience as well. You can also work with the letter of credits, but there make sure to verify all the documents and to make sure that you also work with the trusted third parties in all the documents and etc. Because a slightest error and the bank will refuse to pay. You can also work with cash in advance. if possible, to already have some of the money sent before and not everything later, etc. So you also can draw this in your contract. You can also deal with trusted third parties that can make all the logistics and all this for you and have insurances. So this is different mitigation actions you can take care for the Delcrédit risk, but from experience, we can say that usually if you have a good relationship with the third party and with the final client, it resolves by itself. So also building and being reliable yourself as a provider is also important. So that's for. I think there is still a question for Delcrédit risk. Yes. So that's good. That's everybody got paid for their services and for their goods. So that's a good answer, I would say, and I hope this continues. So there is no questions on that. I will leave the floor to Jean-Guillaume.
I think we have a question.
Yes.
Let me read it for you. Someone wants to know if there is a summary or a contract template which cover all the risks to be clarified or pay attention to, as some things lawyer may not know in details of all business scopes. It's a very long question, I'm sorry. Do you have the question, or you want me to
No, I understand that the question is like, is there exists like a contract template that are already...
Yes, a kind of contract, a template to have all those the information about all those risks. Is it exist or no?
Honestly, I'm not sure it would exist. I think this is maybe it could be found online, but I would trust maybe to discuss all these actions together with a lawyer or with a consultancy that will review it. And I hope this the presentation we give today will help companies also reviewing the contract they are dealing with. But honestly, I'm not aware of already made contracts that exists.
So they can contact you eventually if they need more information about this typical risk. Huh? Okay, I don't know who asked the question, but I hope we try to answer. Okay, so now we'll give the floor to Jean-Guillaume.
Yes, thank you, Alex. Thank you, Carol. Hello, everyone. I hope you are all doing well and that you are all hearing me well. So my name is Jean-Guillaume. I'm a consultant in customs and international trade. Yeah, maybe some words on me. So before joining PwC, I gained experience in international trade, working at the European Parliament as part of DG External Policies and also at Business Europe. Business Europe is a kind of FEB, is the leading advocate for growth and competitiveness at the European level, representing companies, association, trade associations, etc. at the European level. So this is it. Yeah, maybe another word on me at PwC. Yeah, I'm specialized in export control, or at least specializing. I think it's more accurate in export control. I'm really passionate by that. So this is one of the reasons why I've been requested to present global trade control risks, as well as logistic risk and boycott risks. So maybe let's start by presenting global trade control risks. So maybe to introduce this risk, I suggest to briefly present you two examples, two recent cases. I'm pretty sure that you all know these two cases pretty well. So the first one is related to trade wars. If you remember well, in the last couple of years, the United States imposed additional tariffs on the imports of certain products into the US territory on the ground of national security. As a response, the European Union, as well as such as other countries, of course, decided to impose retaliatory safeguard measures via increasing the tariff rate of certain products, not necessarily the same, upon their entry into their respective territory. This was the first example, and the other one, which is even more recent one, is dedicated to the COVID-19 pandemic. In that perspective, the European Union adopted protective measures in the forms of two export authorization schemes. The main goal behind these measures was merely to prevent a critical situation from arising, such as a shortage of essential products, or also to remedy to that kind of situation. So these two export authorization schemes are the following: one on personal protective equipment, so PPEs, masks, etc., gloves, and the second one, and this is, I think it has been adopted in February or something like that, is dedicated to vaccines, so COVID-19 vaccines. The European Union is indeed not the only country, not the sole actor which adopted that kind of protective measures, I would say. On the contrary, the COVID-19, as you can see on the graph on the screen, in the middle, the bottom in the middle, the bottom above, you can see that there is really a rise, I would say, or a surge in export protectionism measures due to the COVID-19 crisis and pandemic. So this is our hot topic. You may, of course, wonder who this is allowed or not, and I totally understand your point. And why? Maybe because you would recognize that through the World Trade Organization, the members of the WTO benefit from a system of rules dedicated to open, fair, and undistorted competition. It is nevertheless important to acknowledge at this stage that while the WTO, so the World Trade Organization, is the guardian of trade rules and promotes fair and free in the world, it also allows for carve-outs and exceptions, which of course allow its members, such as the United States or European Union, to adopt global trade control measures via various legal instruments. These legal instruments concerns both import and export from or into their territory. So while actually there is a rise in global protectionist measures worldwide, there is also a rise in the challenges to enforce WTO rules and also free trade agreements rules. And indeed, a failure to consider this global trade control measures will strongly impact and challenge the company's ability to be not only compliant, I would say, with international trade regulations, but also create subsequent and inherent risk of penalties, export denials even, and criminal penalties, either criminal or even civil or even criminal penalties, my apologies, and also reputational damages. I will now move to the next one. Yeah, maybe just another words on it, I believe. So in international transactions, global trade control creates risks to be considered not only upon entry of products into the EU territory, for example, and upon the exit of products from the EU territory, but also upon the entry of products into the country of destination. So meaning that there are here two different levels to be assessed, and I will present them right after, and also an additional one, which is linked to the extraterritorial application of some US legal instruments, United States legal instruments, such as the Export Administration Regulations, which means that when exporting, you should consider also these measures. So I suggest to first move to the definition of global trade controls risk at the European level. So meaning upon the entry of products into the EU and upon the exit of these products from the EU. As mentioned on the screen, you can see that global trade controls cover really a variety of legal instruments that I will present on the next slide, managed under both the EU Common Commercial Policy and the EU Common Foreign and Security Policy. These legal instruments aim really at ensuring that global trade is conducted in the context of the principles and objectives of the European Union external actions. Okay, it sounds complicated, maybe high level. Just maybe some exemptions, my apologies, some examples of these principles and objectives of the European Union external actions. Those include and are mentioned in Article 21 of the Treaty on the European Union. So those include safeguarding the European Union's value, its fundamental interest, its security, independence, integrity, encourage the integration of all countries in the world, preserve peace, prevent conflict, and strengthen international security. Also promoting an international system based on stronger multilateral cooperation and good global governance. Those are among, I would say, the main principles and objectives of the European Union external action. So as mentioned, global trade controls cover various legal instruments. In this slide, we have tried to flag all, if I may, most of these legal instruments, and we have created, how to say, we have categorized them into 5 different categories. So first, export control measures. Second, trade defense measures. Third, protective measures. Fourth, restrictive measures. So in other words, sanctions. And finally, fifth, rebalancing measures. Each of these measures brings consequences for international transactions by imposing, as you can see on the right in the implication column, by imposing either authorization and reporting requirements. Second, increasing the duty burden. And third, prohibitions. We already actually presented in the introduction 2 of these legal instruments. So it was so protective measures, so the export authorization schemes against related to personal protective equipment and also COVID-19 vaccines, sorry. And also we have also presented rebalancing measures, so EU rebalancing measures as part of the trade wars with the United States. So now I suggest to focus on the remaining 3 measures, so export control measures, trade defense measers, and restrictive measures.
I will ask the question now because maybe it will help the one who asked the question to hear and to learn more. So there's a question: when exporting or e-commercing to one country, how can we confirm if one product is part of pharma product in the importing country, as importing country may need special certificate for online sales, such as rule requirement like SH code, for example?
This is a really interesting. My apologies, Carol. This is a really interesting question, and I suggest to deal with that question and to provide an answer in 2 slides, because there will be a part dedicated to, I would say, market access, and in that part we try to provide you with tools in order to flag import requirements in these countries, because indeed global trade controls measures do not only refer to measures imposed by the European Union as well as the United States, for example, but also in the country of destination. And if I make a whole, I would suggest to provide an answer in 2 slides, I would say, if it's okay. Okay, perfect. So I was saying that, just some words on export control measures, trade defense measures, and restrictive measures. First, on export control measures, let's take the example of dual-use trade controls. That's something we do quite a lot for the moment, even. What should you understand by dual-use trade controls? What products are to be considered as dual-use items, etc. So maybe some words. Dual-use trade controls is a type of export control measures controlling the export, transfer, transit, and brokerage of dual-use items and commercial goods intended to restricted end uses. dual-use items, I would say, are to be understood as products which could be used for both military and civil purposes. They are, I believe, and it is important to mention, they are really to be distinguished from military products, I would say, because the latter, so military products, are products which are only intended to the military sector, so to the defense sector. So they cannot be used in the civil industry. This is, I would say, I can give you an example of dual-use item. I would say, for example, let's see, GNSS receiver, for example, GNSS antennas. Those are to be considered as dual-use items. Maybe a tool for you there. If you wonder whether your product is to be considered as a dual-use items or not, then there is an interesting tool, really useful, I believe, published. You can find it in on a DigiTrade website dedicated to dual-use trade controls. There exists a correspondence table between commodity codes and export control numbers, so dual-use item. And you can try to see on that table, you can download it, it's an Excel document, you can try to see whether there is a match between your products and the export control numbers. If no, then I would say that of course, if your product is adequately classified in the combined nomenclature, but if this is the case, this means that in 95% of cases, your products will not have to be considered as dual-use item. But if there is a match, please note that this match still needs to be confirmed. So meaning that you have to assess the match. You have to compare the technical descriptions of your products with the technical description of the export control numbers, which you can find in the dual-use regulation. Another example, maybe another word. Here I mentioned that I mentioned in the introduction, I believe, that even if there is no match in that correspondence table, this does not mean that your product is not to be considered under, is not to be controlled by the dual-use trade control regime, the EU dual-use trade control regime. Not at all. Actually, that regime controls also commercial products, provided that they are intended to some restricted end uses. Just an example, let's imagine you export lubricants for the automotive industry. Your client is located in Russia, and your client is a military, is active in the military sector. Then your products, which is by nature not a dual-use item, will in that case require an export authorization to leave the EU customs territory. This was just an example. Indeed, there are three other different cases where commercial products could be considered as dual-use items. I don't know if there are questions now, Carol.
Thomas, do we have questions? Let me see. No, I think we don't have any question. But I had one. According to the anti-dumping measure, I wanted to learn more about this particular legal instrument. So the anti-dumping measure. Yes.
That's one. Okay. Just thinking how to proceed. Yeah, what I planned is to discuss trade defense measures. So so maybe before explaining a bit more on anti-dumping measures, so if you allow me, Carol, I would like to present some examples of safeguard measures. And actually, a recent case we had with a company. Mm-hmm. So safeguard measures are type of indeed trade defense measures, imposing quantitative restrictions on imports of products, followed by additional duties to mitigate situations in which an EU industry is affected by an unforeseen, sharp and sudden increase of import. That kind of measures, and I don't know if to a certain extent you as economic operators are active or deal with products of the steel industry. And if this is the case, then you will face some challenge. I guess that even you have been confronted with a raise in price of your raw materials, I would say, of the components in the past 2 years. Why? Because that kind of products, and this is absolutely not funny, this is totally crazy. That kind of product is confronted first with rebalancing measures. So 25% duty rate, for example, meaning steel products, but those products could also be confronted with safeguard measures. So what does it mean? It means that theoretically, as soon as the quota, so the quantitative restriction, is depleted, this means that those products could face with 50% additional duty rates upon their entry into the European territory. So this is, I believe, impressive, and this can, of course, create disruption in an entire sector, or at least companies affected, companies importing that kind of products, using that kind of products as part of as components for their finished products. Then you should be, I guess that you should have been aware of that, or you will be aware of that in the coming days, month, or week. And yeah, Carol, to come back to your question on anti-dumping measures. So actually, this is, as mentioned on the screen, a valorem duty to mitigate exports to the EU at a price lower than the normal value of the products. This mostly concern, if I may a bit simplify the discussion, products from China's subsidized companies. Yeah, after investigation, the European Union realized that the value of that product, or at least the value declared of that product, was much lower than the value of competitor, I would say, within the European Union. So in response, the European Union decided to impose a kind of anti-dumping, sorry, difficult to pronounce, anti-dumping measures on these products. And of course, for companies, for clients, I would say, the clients of this company, of course, this implies an increased duty burden. Unfortunately, there is no tool per se presenting all the products which are confronted by anti-dumping measures, countervailing measures, or safeguard measures, etc. But I believe if you go to I think it was market access database, and now it is called access to market database of the European Commission. There you will be able to search your type the commodity codes of your products and see whether or not there exists a kind of anti-dumping measures, safeguard measures, or countervailing measures applied to your products. I don't know if this answers your question, Carol. Perfect then. And yeah, another example. So third, I would say restrictive measures, often called sanctions. So that type of, yeah, it is often referred to as sanctions, and that's maybe why the term sanction could be more appropriate now. So those measures aim at bringing about a change in a policy or activity by imposing restrictive measures via either prohibitions or restrictions. In that perspective, and there is an interesting tool, it is called the EU Sanction Map, which provide economic operators, I would say, with all measures in force per country. Economic operators could also try to see whether their clients are not listed in any EU sanction regime, etc. And what's interesting also is that the economic operators will be able to find guidelines on how to interpret terms in the various sanctions formulated by the European Union. I truly recommend you to use this free tool. This is from the European Council, so it is up to date. And yeah, so we can move, I believe, checking if some words. So global trade controls measures at the European Union level, at least, I mean, will be really at the core of the EU trade policy agenda in the coming months, or at least years, or even years. Because in its new trade policy review, which this is totally new, this 1 month, totally new trade policy review of the European Commission, it's indeed confirmed its intention to not only continue to use trade defense instruments, so meaning all the trade defense instruments mentioned on the previous slide will either remain in force or will target new products, let's say. Additionally, the European Commission will work towards an effective implementation of its new export control regime dedicated to dual-use items. So this is indeed key, because I truly believe that this will bring additional challenges to companies not per se, I would say, necessarily involved in dual-use items, but because this new regulation targets additional products, additional commercial products for such as cybersecurity items, and just name it, and also products intended to new restrictive end uses, including human rights considerations therein. So this is really key, and I truly believe that companies which at this stage believe not to be impacted by that kind of measures will change their minds in the coming months or week. Even the European Commission really pushed toward further harmonization at European level, and also guidelines enforcement really to help economic operators to comply with the new rules. There is at this stage no. I think it will be adopted in the plenary session in spring 2021, if I remember well. And in the coming months, I guess that we will have access to kind of guidelines on the interpretation of terms and how to really comply with these controls.
Sorry, Jean-Guillaume, I think Elena wants to add something. Is it true, Elena? You have to put your sound. We don't hear you. Hello?
Hello, do you hear me now?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to jump in on the anti-dumping measures. There is a tool available from the Belgian customs authorities where you can check when you are importing goods to see whether any anti-dumping would be applicable. Because just to give a practical example, when would you be in a situation that anti-dumping rules might be applicable? That is when you would you're looking for maybe textile things like that, maybe already clothes or just textile as a raw material. In that case, you will notice that if you source it from China, the price will be way lower than when you source it from an EU country, for example. And in order to generate a level playing field, the EU will decide for example, textile to apply anti-dumping measures, so that when your goods come at the border and you will have to pay the duties, they will be much higher than and bring your total cost price plus duty closer to the price of textile in the EU. So that's basically what anti-dumping measures do. So if you come across a product that you would like to source from a third country and you think, whoa, these prices are very low, please always check whether there aren't any anti-dumping measures. It's the website is called Tarbel, and there you can see based on the commodity codes. But maybe we can have the slide.
Please. Can you send the website on the chat, please?
Yeah, I will.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
you. So I give the floor to Jean-Guillaume.
Okay, thank you, Carol. Thank you, Elena. Indeed, we will add this tool to the slide deck in the previous slide. Yeah. So also to conclude with new trends, I would say at the European level, I would say that the European Commission also confirmed that its willingness to develop new tools to confront new challenges. So this is key, because additional tools from those we mentioned in the previous slide will have to be also considered by companies. And the idea behind is really to protect, to a certain extent, European companies and citizens from unfair trading practices, but to another hand, companies, EU companies, European companies importing products from third countries could also be confronted with that kind of new challenges and new measures. Okay. So now let's move to the US extraterritorial application. So as mentioned in the introduction, contrary to the European Union, which really is reluctant from adopting legal instruments having an extraterritorial application, this is not the case of the United States. Meaning that even economic operators, EU economic operators, could be confronted with US export control measures, for example. And in this slide, I just bring the example of the export administration regulations. And you can see that 4 different types of products could fall under that regulation. And this implies, of course, as a consequence, if companies fall, this implies authorization and reporting requirements. And also, in case of non-compliance, civil and even criminal penalties from the US. So you can see here that product category A, of course, cover all the products within the US territory. Product category B covers all US origin items wherever located. Then let's say that, for example, you export a US product from the European Union to another third country. Then if this product is controlled by the US, then you will have to comply with the export administration regulation. And there are 2 other types of products. The product category C, just as an example, it covers products, so non-US made products, let's say EU products, which incorporate more than a certain content of US controlled products. So let's say which incorporate more than a certain content of US dual use items, I mean. So this just for your information, maybe, and to cover all the potential global trade controls risk. But I believe that at this stage you would have other priorities than checking the applicability of the US export control regime. And yeah, coming back to global trade controls imposed upon entry in the country of destination, then indeed this is more complicated to determine that kind of controls compared to at the European level. There are numerous burdens, and just name it, and quantity of countries, language, sources, time, resources. So that's why we did here is to include 2 links: access to markets and a global trade alert. Access to market is really interesting, as mentioned previously, because it provides you with real indications, at least I would say high level guidelines on which type of authorizations, which types of controls are likely to affect your products upon entry in a certain country of destination. And the other one is Global Trade Alert. This is, I would say, a new one, a more recent one, totally independent, which really follows all the news and report all the protective measures, trade defense measures, global trade control measures imposed worldwide. This from the University of St. Gallen, which is really a renewed university in terms of public policy. So this is a tool really that I would recommend you. If I may, you can, of course, this is totally free indeed, and you can also download reports from it in order to see whether and to flag all the type of controls applying to your products upon entry in a certain country. And yeah, maybe as general recommendations or general mitigating actions, we suggest indeed, as mentioned by Elena in the introduction, to engage with your entire company. So this is not only a trade compliance or customs or logistic issues or questions. Everyone should be involved: supply chain, products engineers, etc. Plan, so consider a broad range of export scenario. Update, be careful, follow the news, have really a kind of program, I would say, to ensure that you do not miss anything. Share, do not hesitate to share your question with us, of course, as well, just now. So please do it. Enjoy from this forum to do so. And finally, a solution: use tools. There are numerous tools, as mentioned by Elena, also to let's say ease your tasks and really have a great strategy, if I may, to be confident in view of global trade controls risk. I don't know if at this stage there are questions on global trade controls, and if I answered your question, Carol. Yeah, there is a poll now. Yes, so 57% of the participants feel that global trade controls are likely to impact their activities, and I think that this seems to me to be a fair share of the respondent, because of course I understand that companies, for example, active in the food industry, are not at all, I would say, impacted by that kind of measures. But others, yeah, most likely biotechnology companies, etc., or yeah, just name it. Really, numerous companies are to be confronted and impacted by that kind of global trade controls measures and risks. Okay. So if there are no questions from you, Carol, or from the audience, or from you, Thomas, then we can move to logistic risks.
A question, Thomas? Let me check. No, I don't think so.
Okay. I know that this is maybe a lot to digest for the moment, but at least now you have I would say, a structure to map all your own risks, I would say, and to really be confident for upcoming export projects, or I don't know. So yeah, logistic risks now. Yeah, so let's now discuss logistics risk as part of international transactions. Let's start by taking the example of a Belgian company, a Belgian manufacturer, which is willing to establish a regional distribution center in Latin America, let's say in Bolivia, in order to ensure faster deliveries throughout the entire region, so throughout Latin America. The company in that case is looking, of course, for a reliable partner for PL, so able to oversee all the processes and to meet customers' expectation by providing high quality deliveries. This is ambitious, sorry, and even more, it is difficult to monitor when being based in Belgium and in the absence of any resource in that kind of country. So, in your view, what are the key variables you should consider? I believe that I will answer that question myself, indeed, in the next one. We define these variables are risks, such as the efficiency of customs and border management clearance, the quality of trade and transport infrastructure, the ease of arranging competitively priced shipments, the competence and quality of logistic services, of course, the ability to track and trade consignments, and the frequency with which shipments reach consignees within scheduled or expected delivery times. So indeed, why does it matter for you in that case? I'm totally sure that you easily understand that taking care or assessing those variables will ensure you avoid delays in delivering goods, unhappy clients as a consequence, indeed, negative reputational effects for your company, extra costs and resources to resolve arising issues, and finally, increased time to market. I would say that this, of course, in the absence of a reliable partner in that case, then your project, the company's project to ensure fast delivery and to be closer to its customers in Latin America will not be achieved without due consideration of these variables. What we suggest then is indeed assess your supply chain, know your carriers, and build relationship with them. Don't hesitate to ask for quote, don't hesitate to compare them and to compare the services, etc. Rely on benchmarks. I will present some of those on the next slide. Ensure clear contractual arrangements between you and your for PL rely on insurances and master Incoterms. So I suggest to present two interesting benchmarks we use quite often. The first one is the logistic performance indicators from the World Bank, which really rates logistic performance of and the logistic performance indicators mentioned in the previous slide across countries. As you can see on this slide, Belgium is performing quite well. I hope that this reflects at least your perception of logistic performance in Belgium. Second, another example is the DHL Global Connectedness Index, sorry, difficult to pronounce, which outlines the connectivity of countries with others and present some country profiles, so key indicators for numerous countries. Really, how these countries are linked to others in the world of global trade and international trade. Often, when I believe that when deciding in which country you would like to stay or to expand your activities, I think that those could be interesting tools and benchmarks really to flag them and create a kind of order of priority, let's say. Okay, I don't know if there are any questions on logistics risks. If not, then we can move to boycott risks, which are really the last ones we would like to focus on a bit and to present their impacts and some cases also, recent cases, meaning that this is still relevant, and we believe that it will be even more relevant in the future. But I will present some just an example of that. So some examples of boycott risks. First one, boycott against French products. These are recent one. The Muslim world boycott against French products. So remember, in October 2020, several Arab states decided or called for a boycott of French products after the French President, my apologies, Emmanuel Macron, said that he would propose legislation to tackle Islamist separatism and paid tribute to history teacher Samuel Paty, who was murdered after showing caricature of Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad in class. Just as an example. The other one concerns, and I guess you all know the existing conflict between them two, concern the Palestinian boycotts against Israeli goods. And another one, as mentioned by Elena in our previous discussions, was related to the Russian boycott against well-known products. I think it was back in 2014, 13 or 14 or somewhere like that. And I remember well-known companies were quite impacted by that boycott. So maybe some those are the most famous ones, I would say, from the past the past months or years. But indeed, others exist without so much visibility than those I presented. I mean. So how should we define boycotts? Boycotts derive from a concerted refusal to do business with a particular person or business in order to obtain concessions or express displeasure. This is exactly what Arab states did when promoting a boycott against French products. In that perspective, boycotts really reflect the ethical purchase behaviors of consumers or economic operators, which influence their purchase and consumption behaviors. As you can imagine, and I think that you see the link now, there is really an intrinsically linked and increasing link between boycotts and corporate social responsibility on the one hand, and responsible business conduct on the other one. By corporate social responsibility, so CSR, we mean, following the European Commission definition, the responsibility of companies for their impact on society. And the European Commission outlined that companies can become responsible by integrating social, environmental, ethical, consumer, and human rights concerns into their business strategy and operation, and of course, following the law and the guidelines in that respect. Regarding responsible business conduct, this definition comes from the OECD and not from the European Commission. The latter defined RBC as making a positive contribution to economic, environmental, and social progress with a view to achieve sustainable development and avoiding and addressing the adverse impacts related to a company's direct and indirect operations, products, or services. Why does it matter? Of course, first is to merely avoid boycotts. No. Second, avoid the subsequent or the inherent reputational damages, because I'm pretty sure that people in social media or even in the news or NGOs too could make bad marketing, bad marketing on your activities. And on the contrary, if you include that kind of corporate social responsibility considerations when involved in international transactions, then you will make positive contributions to the society. What's interesting, and this is almost a brand new, my apologies, is that in the European Parliament plenary session of March, the European Parliament agreed on a due diligence responsibility. What does it mean? It means that companies, not only multinational companies, but also small and medium-sized companies, would be liable, considering their corporate social responsibility, due in case they perform an irresponsible business conduct, I would say. In the meaning of that directive, we should understand by unresponsible business conduct anything, I would say, broadly speaking, of course, related to the absence of human rights consideration in international transactions. We truly believe that the European Commission will indeed, and that's what we hope, at least publish guidelines on that respect, in order to allow economic operators such as you to follow and comply with those rules, in order to avoid any penalties to a certain extent. I don't really know at this stage how this will be translated into national legislation and what would be the consequences, material consequences, if I may, on your activities. But yeah, this is something I believe important to consider at this stage and for the future too, because I believe that, such as for global trade controls measures, corporate social responsibility will be also at the core of the EU agenda in the coming years. This is, in my view, merely linked to the increasing role of the European Parliament, which is really pushing towards including additional considerations within the scope of, for example, the EU industrial policy, or in international relations, or in international trade. So this is merely a consequence of that, and yeah, I think I don't have tools for that yet. But as mentioned, I hope that some will be available soon in the forms of guidelines.
Maybe Jean-Guillaume, to add just one thing on the boycott risk and CSR. Maybe some of the companies here do not think they're affected by it, because it's mostly related to big companies that are active in the media and that everybody knows about, etc. But please note that these companies could be also your clients, or could be active in your supply chain, and then you are indirectly infected by their actions and by their human rights issues and by the boycott on their products. So indirectly, even though you don't think you are affected by boycott risk, you can be affected.
Indeed, thanks. You are totally right. Very good point, Alex. Yeah, indeed. Being either directly or indirectly affected by this boycott risk. Indeed, thank you. So I think that this is it for the boycott risk. I don't know if you have any question in the audience, or if you would like us to maybe reformulate some of our contributions, or I don't know, etc. Just drop a message in the chat, and we will do it, of course.
No, I don't think we have a question, but they will receive the presentation, of course, I told it. And if they want to contact you about a specific point, they can do it easily, of course. I don't know if someone wants to add something more.
Yes, actually, I wanted to quickly come back to the question, the original question that was asked about the template contract.
Yeah.
So while I'm not aware that of these template contracts, because I guess the risks are also tailored your own, and you need to a bit assess what risk and what you should be drafting the contract. There exists Incoterms which can guide to what is the responsibility of the players. So who has to pay the insurance, who has to bring, who is responsible for the transport costs, etc. So these Incoterms at least take some ease out of the negotiations process, because they assign already the roles and responsibilities. But next to that, of course, you still need to find your own assurances regarding topics that only concern you and your business, while transport and insurance and all this other kind of costs and responsibilities are a bit common to all types of business. So that's why we have standards Incoterms. So I just wanted to mention that, because we didn't mention it in the beginning. We didn't pay too much attention on the Incoterms, but this is something definitely that companies need to be aware of, so that they also understand what are their roles and responsibilities as well. So just this.
And maybe if I can jump in on this one as well, what we see sometimes is that you agree on an Incoterm with your supplier or your clients, but then it is also very important that you lock that into your contractual agreement as well, because if there is a discussion, your contractual agreement will supersede the Incoterm that you have negotiated, and that will be on the invoice, for example. Let's say you have an issue, the administration will come to you, well, let me see your contract. The contract is always leading. So make sure that whatever you decide on Incoterm, that is also reflected in your contract as well. And then I would say that the topics that we dealt with in this presentation might be something to put next to the Incoterms as well, and that you will get a long way from there. You have the Incoterms which have the roles and responsibilities, but then of course you also have to think of the Delta risk, the very important, the exchange rate risk. Yeah, because that's not something that's typically agreed in Incoterms. But yeah, I think with Incoterms and this presentation that you will go a long way already. And always put it in a contract.
Okay, very important, Elena. Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there any question? Let me have a look. Yeah, someone wants to know if there is a list of boycotted goods. Who want to answer?
Yeah, me, if I may, I would say no. This is not formal, and this is much more an informal action promoted by merely by people pushing for that kind of boycotts, and not by, I would say, officials, so government officials. Yeah, but not legal instruments, I mean, my apologies. So no, there is no, but I guess that you will be informed when dealing with that kind of products. Actually, often, as mentioned in the case of the Arab states boycott against French products, and also the boycotts against Israeli products, those are really at the core of the news. Where at the core of the news, such as the boycott, the Russian boycott against the Belgian fruits. And this is indeed one of the key elements of boycotts. people to gain, I would say, for that boycotts to be effective, this means that there should be a huge involvement of people. So people should communicate about that. So in our order, I believe that economic operators are informed, but nothing indeed, since this is not a real legal instrument, nothing fixed in paper at this stage, at least.
Yes, thank you, Jean-Guillaume. We have a last question to end the webinar. I don't know if Thomas can. Okay, thank you, Thomas. Yes.
It's good that nobody says not relevant. I think this is to be expected for small and medium enterprises to have this risk moderately applicable. It's a fair answer. And we hope that the tools that we presented during this webinar can assist those companies if they want to export to mitigate the risk presented. And I think that hub.brussels is going to present another webinar already. I'm not sure on the legal risk, which is separate, right? Because I think this is also something that companies are facing a lot, is the legal requirements in the company of importation, in the country of importation. So I think this is subject to another webinar you are doing.
Indeed, it's after the Easter holiday on the 22nd of April.
Okay.
Okay. Is there something more to add, or we have made another question? So just to remind maybe the company that the theme of next week will be how to finance your international activities. So please feel free to register, of course, on our website right now if you are interested about this theme. Is there something more that someone want to add, or I just want to thank all of you, of course. Thank you to share with us this. It was very technical, so I'm sure that people are going to be very happy to receive the slides and all the presentation, the webinar, because of course you can all continue to have more information just by watching the webinar again and by contacting all the different speakers present today. So thank you to my colleague Thomas, who is a very technical professional for the webinar. It's also a problem for us because with all the technical aspects, we don't really know how it's going to manage. So thank you for all of you. Thank you for all our participants, and see you next week for another theme. Bye-bye.
And thank you, Carol.
Thank you. Take care.